Any nigga tryna front on my clique, G-Unit.
Well, a member of 50 Cent's entourage is recovering today from a gunshot wound. The 24-year-old Los Angeles man was reportedly shot in the leg last night while in the lobby of a Manhattan radio station. Police say a group was exiting the building. They were leaving and they started to argue and someone pulled a gun. 50 was not injured during the incident. Victim is in stable condition. No arrests have been made.
50 Cent has had endless beefs to date, which he has always been able to decide in his favor. He has taken on greats like Ja Rule, Fat Joe, or Jay-Z, and was usually able to win the beefs without getting a public scratch. Only one artist was able to do significant damage to 50 Cent in his prime time, and that was The Game. This is the complete story of the beef between The Game and 50 Cent. In 2002, Eminem discovered 50 Cent and offered him a multi-million-dollar deal together with Dr. Dre, which 50 Cent, of course, signed immediately. At the same time, Dr. Dre was looking for a West Coast artist who could finally bring the West Coast back to the fore. During his search, he came across a demo tape by an artist that Dr. Dre immediately liked. It was The Game. When 50 Cent was celebrating his greatest successes, Dr. Dre worked with The Game on The Game's debut album. They fine-tuned the technique and tried to find the right beats for The Game. At some point, the verses were perfect. The only thing was, The Game had a weakness, and that's why they could never finish a project. And that was the hooks. You can kick bars to death on mixtapes, but when it comes to an album, the hook is everything. So Dr. Dre and Game spent the better part of 2003 building hype around The Game through mixtapes and features. Until Dr. Dre comes up with a very good idea. 50 is known for being a hook monster. Besides, 50 was a workaholic and had a lot of unreleased projects lying around. So they decide to ask 50 Cent for help. 50, who at the time was presenting his crew G-Unit to the world, immediately saw the potential in The Game. After making music together for the first time, they realized that the chemistry was right and came up with the idea of integrating The Game into the G-Unit. So they would have Young Buck from the South, Banks, Yayo, and 50 from New York, and The Game from the West. A perfect combination. So The Game slowly began to become a part of G-Unit. If you watch all 50 Cent videos, you'll see The Game a lot. He was even in the Club video. Everything was going perfectly. But there was a small problem that will ruin everything in the future. And the problem was called Jimmy Henchman. Jimmy was The Game's manager and was very good friends with Kenneth Supremes. Supreme was something of an arch-enemy of 50 Cent and was most likely responsible for him being shot 9 times. In addition, Supreme works with Murray Inc., with whom 50 also has a beef. And that's what bothers 50 Cent about The Game from the outset. Despite his concerns, 50 Cent sees the bigger picture, which is so convincing that he has to sign The Game. The Game was immediately convinced by the idea, and so The Game officially became part of G-Unit. In 2003, mixtapes were the best way to launch a new artist, and 50 had a stranglehold on the mixtape market at the time, so they put The Game on their upcoming mixtapes, which were a huge success, until The Game even released his own mixtape called The Fifth Element, thus becoming an official G-Unit member to the public as well. When The Game got the attention they had been working for so long, they started working on the debut album again in 2004. To eliminate the problem with the hooks, 50 Cent took 2 solo songs that were originally planned for his upcoming album The Massacre, muted his voice and let The Game fill the heel. The 2 songs were How We Do and Hate It or Love It, which are still considered classics today. During the album process, 50 writes 2 more hooks for The Game, for the tracks West Side Story and Church for Thugs, so that The Game's album, The Documentary, is finally finished. The first single, West Side Story, featuring 50, which is released without a video, doesn't make any big waves. But when they drop the single How We Do in November 2004, The Game becomes known worldwide. When his album went straight to number 1, The Game thought he ruled the world. He started dissing people, while 50 Cent tried to smooth things over in the background so that DJs would continue to play The Game's music. Also, The Game hardly ever mentioned in interviews what a big role 50 Cent played in the project. Nevertheless, 50 Cent stays calm, continues to work as usual, and watches how The Game develops. But as 50 Cent says, the game became more and more disrespectful. He doesn't wear G-Unit clothes, and to top it off, he says in interviews that he has no problem with Fat Joe or Jadakiss, while their beef with 50 Cent is currently on fire. That said, 50 is trying to clear up the game's quarrels behind the scenes, while the game is standing by 50's enemies. He gives the game his first 2 singles, for which he gets no respect, and in the background, there are repeated friction with Jimmy Henchman, whom 50 can't stand anyway because of Supreme. The atmosphere was so tense that even during the Hated or Love It video shoot, the game and 50 repeatedly had small arguments. And just 1 week after the video release, 50 Cent had had enough. He went on the radio and announced that the game was officially no longer a member of G-Unit. At the same time, the game was in New York on a radio show to promote his album, when suddenly a fan calls the radio station and tells the game live about what 50 Cent just said about the game. The game was very surprised, and in retrospect, he often said in interviews that this was the first time he heard about the G-Unit sacking, and so the beef began.
Just want to know what's up with Game, what's up with him and 50. 50 talking real greasy, you know? He said his next album he ain't doing nothing for you. You gonna sell like 500,000 copies.
That's what he said?
That's what he said.
Wow.
When 50 then again speaks badly about the game, in the next interview, the game hears the interview live on air in New York, so he decides to drive to the radio station and confront 50 Cent. Game grabs a bunch of guys and drives off. When they arrive at the radio station, 50's securities notice a bunch of guys approaching the building. In front, the game. They want to enter the building. The conversation with the securities is getting louder while 50 Cent is still on the air. The conversation turns into a scuffle, and the scuffle turns into a shootout in which the game's colleague is shot in the leg. When 50 Cent hears the shots, he storms out of the live interview and leaves the building through the back door. When the press gets wind of the action, they try to turn it into a Biggie versus Tupac situation, so the game and 50 decide to put the beef aside on camera 2 weeks after the incident, on the anniversary of Biggie's death. But you can see on the game's face that he didn't do it of his own free will. And for him, after his body was shot, the matter is far from settled. And unfortunately, the peace did not last long. After a short time, the game started dissing G-Unit on stages far away in Europe. 50 Cent found out about it and started talking badly about the game in interviews again, until the game got tired of it this time, and that was the birth of G-Unit. In June 2005, the game goes on the Summer Jam stage in New York, knowing that the whole hip-hop scene is watching. He takes his fat G-Unit chain off his neck and throws it into the audience saying, "Fuck this chain." He starts the How We Do song and diss each member of G-Unit. He calls 50 Cent a snitch because of the allegations of Murray Ing, brings a guy in a rat costume on stage and calls the rat 50 Cent, while his boys kick the rat. From now on, it's just G-Unit and no longer G-Unit is the announcement. And from that point on, the game started dissing 50 Cent everywhere he could. He released the song 300 Bars, which received a lot of recognition from the scene and for the first time dented 50 Cent's image. He raps for a full 15 minutes on several beat switches and makes fun of the entire G-Unit. You really have to give the song a listen. To quote just one sentence that the game said, "You can't play the game with only 50 Cent." With a lot of humor and supposed insider information, the game was able to convince the masses with his statements. 50, on the other hand, has not really responded to date, except for the game making a fool of him in the Piggy Bank video. A few months passed before 50 Cent's movie was released. And to hurt 50, the game released a complete diss mixtape called Ghost Unit just a few days before. When the movie flopped at the box office and 50 Cent suffered a setback for the first time, the game didn't let up. He released a mixtape and a DVD to go with it called Stop Snitchin' Stop Lying, which was a reference to 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Tryin'. The mixtape was full of diss tracks again, and on the DVD, the game goes on a search for 50 Cent until he is actually standing in front of his mansion. All of this is underlaid with a lot of humor and was simply pure entertainment. The game just didn't let up until G-Unit finally responded. But even I, as a former G-Unit fan, didn't think the tracks were nearly as bad as the game's diss tracks against G-Unit. 50 Cent never dropped a destructive diss track like Back Down against Ja Rule back in the day. Just a song in which he imitates the Game's voice called I'm Not Rich, I'm Still Lying. The song was funny and all, but it wasn't nearly as hard as the songs that the Game released against 50 Cent. In this song, 50 Cent reveals that the Game was not a gang member before his rap career, and that even with confirmation from the Game's big brother. In addition, 50 said that he would always make money from the Game's album sales. In the following weeks, G-Unit released several songs directed at the Game, revealing that he had been dumped on camera by a woman on a talk show called Change of Heart in 2001. Of course, this also affects the Game's image. In September 2006, he decides to release 100 bars again by attacking the entire G-Unit, and so it went back and forth for months. The biggest problem with the beef is that most of the fighting takes place in the background, and it's never the rappers who are protected when blood is shed. It's more the friends who carry out the feud on the street. So the Game decided to take a step towards 50 Cent for the first time and offered him peace for the first of many times. However, he revised the statement the next day on the grounds that this offer was only valid for 24 hours. And so it went on with the diss tracks until 2007. March 20th, Tony Yayo leaves the studio when he sees the 14-year-old son of Jimmy Henchman, the manager of the Game, across the street. He is wearing a GU Not t-shirt. When Yayo notices this, he crosses the street with his buddy to confront the boy. They talk down to the 14-year-old and threaten him. Tony Yayo's buddy shows his gun and Yayo just slaps the boy in the face until he can flee into the building. The boy immediately calls his father, Jimmy Henchman, and the following week, Tony Yayo is arrested. He takes a deal and only has to do 10 days of community service. Only his buddy who confessed was found guilty and had to spend 2 years behind bars. As I said before, it's usually not the stars who bleed, but the guys in the background. After that happened, Tony Yayo's buddy went to jail, and the word on the street was that Jimmy Henchman had put a contract out on Tony Yayo, among others. As a result, shots were fired at Tony Yayo's motorcade. Even Yayo's mother's house was riddled with more than 20 shots, fired with a silenced weapon. And when Tony Yayo's buddy got out of jail, he was shot dead in the Bronx just 2 weeks after his release. Later, business partners admitted in court that Jimmy Henchman paid 30,000 euros for coke to have Tony Yayo's body killed. They admitted that all the shootings of Tony Yayo and his family were because of Jimmy Henchman. And as if that wasn't enough, Jimmy also tried to kill 50 Cent. Several times, an acquaintance of Jimmy tried to ambush 50, until they even came up with the idea of blowing up 50's van while 50 was sitting in it. When 50 Cent got wind of this, he sent a couple of guys to the house of Jimmy's buddy, had a dead rat placed on his doorstep, and had him threatened by gangsters over the phone. When Jimmy's buddy finds the dead rat on his doorstep, he finally leaves 50 Cent alone. Meanwhile, Jimmy Henchman is doing life in prison for various criminal acts, including the murder of Tony Yayos' buddy. And since then, everyone involved in the beef knows that the police are looking closely. The beef around 50 and the Game is slowly dying down. There were taunts from time to time, but the beef never got as big as it used to be. Until the day 50 Cent started the beef with Rick Ross, and the Game publicly took 50 Cent's side in the beef. When Michael Jackson died in 2009, the Game announced in an interview that Michael Jackson and P. Diddy had tried to end the beef between him and 50 Cent, and that out of respect for Michael Jackson, he officially ended the beef against 50 Cent. Nevertheless, 50 Cent disses the Game on 2 songs on his last album. One of the songs is called So Disrespectful, and for me it is still a very, very strong song today. But even though they occasionally diss each other, the feud is cooling down more and more. In 2010, the Game said in an interview that he would love to see the G-Unit together with him as a member again. Since then, he has repeatedly tried to make a move on 50 Cent. But since 50 never responded, we never got the long-awaited G-Unit reunion with the Game. In March 2016, the Game heard that 50 Cent was at a club in Los Angeles, so he decided to go there and they celebrated without it escalating. And in August, just a few months later, they were back at the same club and were finally able to talk to each other. As the Game once said, they both couldn't even remember how the whole quarrel started during their conversation. They finally made peace after more than a decade, but even peace has sparked disputes again. Many in the background of the beef have lost their lives, while the Game and 50 Cent have enjoyed their millionaire lives. Meanwhile, the Game has also quit his rap career, just like 50 Cent. 50 still releases a few tracks from time to time. The Game, on the other hand, has lost his entire career due to a huge lawsuit. I will tell you exactly what happened in another video. Feel free to check out my other videos, stay healthy, and we'll see you in the next video.